All right, let's dive into the world of Jack Welch. If you're here, you're probably interested in his leadership, right? So we're going to break it all down using his own words, stuff from his autobiography, and some really cool recordings of his speeches. It's kind of like we're sneaking backstage to learn about a CEO who, well, he was famous, but also caused a lot of debate.
Yeah, this isn't just textbook business stuff. We're getting the raw Jack Welch here, like his wins, his regrets, how he changed as a leader over time.
Exactly, like what made him tick. Let's start with his early days at GE. I mean, you hear Welch, you think GE, but there was a time he almost left.
So picture this. 1963, he's this young, hotshot engineer at GE Plastics, clearly super bright, but already you can see that drive, that need to get stuff done.
Right.
The corporate culture back then, it was a whole different animal.
Yeah, how so?
Way slower, like bogged down in bureaucracy, which really got under Welch's skin.
So he gets a job offer from somewhere else. Whoa, can you imagine? A world where Jack Welch isn't the Jack Welch of GE.
It almost happened. He was seriously thinking about it. But then Reuben Guthoff, this bigwig exec at GE, he steps in. He sees Welch's potential, sees he's frustrated, and offers him this deal. More freedom, more responsibility, a real chance to lead. Welch took the gamble, stayed put, and the rest is, well, GE history.
And then the 80s hit, Welch takes over as CEO, and bam, Neutron Jack is born. He starts shaking things up big time at GE, making these huge, some might even say ruthless decisions.
Yeah, this is where that famous fix, sell, or close idea really kicks in. Welch was all about making GE the #1 player no matter what market they were in. And that meant some tough choices like a lot of layoffs. Hence the nickname Neutron Jack, people gone, building still there.
This is also when we get rank and yank, a system that people still talk about, still debate. It was all about creating this super intense, performance-driven culture, ranking employees, and then boom, those in the bottom 10%, gone every year. What's wild is this whole thing, based on this vitality curve, was supposed to weed out the weaker players and help the best rise to the top. But it also messed with the company culture, how people felt about working there, good and bad. Some say it just made people scared. Others say it pushed them to perform better, made them accountable.
It's important to remember what was going on in the world back then, the whole global scene. Competition was crazy fierce. Welch really believed that for GE to not just survive, but to win, they had to be leaner, faster, way more agile.
So it wasn't just about slashing costs, right? Welch was obsessed with developing leaders. GE became known for producing these amazing executives like a people factory. And of course, there's their famous training center, Crotonville.
For sure. Developing leaders was at the heart of what he believed. He put a ton of resources into finding, mentoring, and promoting people with real potential. And his way of planning for who would take over. Legendary, methodical, strategic, almost like a drama playing out.
Yeah, it's like we're talking high-stakes poker played out over years, secret dinners with potential candidates, then these calculated leaks to the board. Like he was creating this buzz on purpose to avoid all the internal politics.
And at the end of it all, there were these 3 super strong contenders, Jeff Immelt, Jim McNerney, and Bob Nardelli. Picking one meant the other 2 would be disappointed, and you could tell Welch really struggled with that.
I can only imagine the weight of a decision like that. But this focus on people, it shows you something else that was really core to Welch's leadership, right? His principles. What are some big takeaways for our listeners based on all this stuff we've got?
Well, Welch was all about keeping things informal, breaking down walls within the company. He hated bureaucracy, thought it killed creativity, and he fought it hard.
And speed. That was everything to him. He was always stressing the importance of making decisions fast, taking action, even if it meant messing up sometimes. He actually said he usually regretted not moving fast enough.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's candor. That was a huge one for him. Direct communication, honest feedback, no BS. Welch believed in facing reality head on, even if it was uncomfortable. And that translated to a management style, well, let's just say he was known for being blunt, whether he was praising you or criticizing you.
Didn't he have this interesting analogy about a clothing store manager?
He did. This guy sees Welch on TV talking about that bottom 10% rule.
Yeah.
Later, he actually bumps into Welch and totally seriously asks him, so you mean I really got to fire 2 of my employees? It's like, it just shows you how much Welch's ideas spread out into the business world. He had a big influence, really shaped a whole generation of leaders.
Though some would say maybe not always for the better. Wasn't there a cost to this constant pressure to perform, this pushing people all the time? Did it maybe come at the expense of, people's well-being or work-life balance?
That's a good point. We have to look at the possible downsides of that kind of high-pressure environment, right? Did it lead to people burning out? Did it stifle creativity? Those are questions worth digging into a bit more.
Definitely. Now, we can't talk about Welch without talking about the Honeywell deal. That was the massive takeover attempt that, well, crashed and burned. What happened there?
Back in 2000, GE announced they were going to buy Honeywell for, get this, $45 billion. It was supposed to be this merger of titans, creating this industrial superpower. But oh boy, it turned into a regulatory nightmare.
Mostly with the European Commission, right? They had concerns that went beyond the usual antitrust stuff.
Exactly. And Welch was furious. He saw it as pure red tape, stifling innovation and competition. He was basically saying the commission was overreaching, trying to protect European companies and hurting global progress in the process.
He actually had this really clever analogy about a golf course to explain what was going on.
Yeah. So picture this. You buy this awesome golf course, right? And then the city comes in and says, okay, but you got to give the best holes to another course. Perfect way to sum up how frustrated he was with what he saw as interference he didn't deserve.
So in the end, the deal falls apart. Welch retires, and Jeff Immelt takes the reins as CEO. But even after retiring, Welch stayed involved in the business world. He seemed particularly interested in globalization, China's growing power, and how leadership was changing.
It's interesting. He had this advice, leave half the pie open for the Chinese. He could see China's potential and basically warned Western companies not to underestimate their ambition or how competitive they were.
Wow, that's pretty insightful when you look at the economic landscape today. Almost like he predicted it. So putting it all together, Welch's legacy, it's complicated. He was praised for being a visionary leader, but also criticized for being ruthless, for maybe focusing too much on short-term profits. How do we make sense of these totally different views of him?
You have to remember, Welch was a product of his time, working in an era where competition was cutthroat and things changed so fast. His methods, yeah, they were controversial sometimes, but no one can deny that they worked. I mean, he turned GE into this global powerhouse. But in the end, his legacy. It's up to each person to decide what they think.
So it's not about whether we agree or disagree with everything he did.
Nope. It's about understanding the whole picture, all the complexities and the impact his ideas had, which are still felt today.
Because even now, decades after he left GE, Jack Welch's influence is still there, in boardrooms and businesses all over the world. His way of doing things, it still sparks debates, still inspires new leaders. It's wild, he may be gone, but that whole discussion about his legacy and what it means for leadership, it's definitely not over. We've talked about Welch's rise, how he changed GE, his principles, but, beyond the business stuff, all this source material really tells you about Welch the person, his drive, things he regretted, his values. What's the thing that stands out to you about the guy himself?
It's his constant, thirst for knowledge. It's striking. Even when he's CEO of this massive company, he's still learning, looking for new ideas, challenging himself. He surrounded himself with people who would, push him, teach him things, make him think differently.
He really seemed to value that, getting input from all sorts of people. And for someone who was known for making these tough decisions, he also talked a lot about how important that human side of things was, connecting with employees, getting where they were coming from, making sure they felt valued.
Yeah, there's this story where Welch is visiting a GE plant and he sees these employees all huddled together looking really worried. He goes over and asks, "What's up?" They tell him they're scared of losing their jobs because of all the automation happening.
Oh, wow.
Welch, he listens to them and then says, "Look, I get it. Change can be scary. But I promise you, if you're willing to learn new things and adapt, you'll always have a place here at GE."
It's that combination, making the tough calls, but also seeing how it affects people. That's what makes his style of leadership so interesting. He didn't shy away from hard choices, but he also didn't ignore the human side of things.
And he was surprisingly open about his own screw-ups. He talks about times he waited too long to act, decisions he wished he could take back, opportunities he missed. It's a good reminder that even the most successful leaders, they're human, they make mistakes too.
Yeah, leadership is a lot about navigating those tricky situations. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. What's the one thing, the one big takeaway you want our listener to walk away with from exploring Jack Welch's world?
I think it's this. Leadership isn't like some recipe you follow step by step. It's more like a journey. It's about always growing, always learning, adapting to new challenges. It's about being brave enough to make tough choices, but also being empathetic enough to understand how those choices affect other people. And at the end of the day, it's about leaving behind something that inspires the next generation of leaders To lead with integrity, with passion, always striving for excellence.
That's a great way to put it. And with that, a huge thanks to you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's been insightful, made you think, and maybe even inspired you a little. Now go out there and lead with passion, just like Jack Welch, but maybe with a bit less neutron. Thanks for listening.